This is AI Goes to College, a new podcast about artificial intelligence in higher education and beyond.
Welcome to the first episode of AI Goes to College, a podcast presented by the AI Advisory Council at Florida State College at Jacksonville. I'm your host, Professor Sarah Stewart. In this podcast series, we discuss how artificial intelligence is impacting higher education right now and what it may mean for students' future employment. I'm excited to introduce my esteemed colleagues today. First, we have Dr. Audrey Ante, Director of the Academy for Teaching and Learning here at FSCJ, a wonderful resource for offering support and training for faculty members, especially lately with the AI-centric workshops. Dr. Ante is also a professor of English, like me. Welcome, Audrey.
Thank you.
We also have Professor Thomas Scott Kaysen, aka Scott, Professor of Humanities, who is spearheading some wonderful conversations and workshops at the college around AI in the classroom, and serves alongside me on the FSCJ AI Advisory Council. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today, both of you. I know it's a really busy time of year for all of us, so I appreciate your time and your insight. I want to note that while this podcast is available in video format, that for listeners, I'm going to try my best to explain kind of what's going on the screen and name the people who are going to join us in our clips. But first, I want each of you, let's start with you, Scott. Tell me what you've been doing around AI at the college. There's a lot of workshops that have been offered, which is wonderful for faculty. But what have you specifically been involved in?
So for me, in terms of within the classroom, or what specifically would you want to?
So the programs and the workshops for faculty, but also in the classroom. You can speak to both. Good.
So from a big picture point of view, with the Academy, I guess starting last spring, I believe 2023, we were really more ahead of the ball than I think we thought we were at that time in terms of offering professional development to faculty, which has continued on since that point, as well as community practices on a more intimate level, kind of, which allows us to speak more intimately, if you will, with faculty members in terms of how they are using AI. For myself, though, which I'm sure we'll touch on throughout at some point, it's been transformative, both in terms of as on instructional level, but also in terms of my just basic kind of professional duties as well. From an efficiency standpoint, I found it to be deeply impactful.
Yeah, and I want to go more into that, kind of like the workflow solutions. How about you, Audrey?
So from the larger academy perspective, Scott's right. We started spring of 2023 because we felt an urgency, if not to necessarily share the absolute known things for the people like Scott who had already started digging in and experimenting with what some of these different tools could do, specifically ChatGPT, but you were looking at a lot of them. We wanted to give faculty a sense of the scope of what was possible with AI in a positive way, for us, but also the potential pitfalls. If we aren't aware, of what's available, what could happen with students, what do we do about academic honesty, how do we ensure rigor in our courses? And so one of the things that came out of the spring term was the AI pedagogy certificate, which is something around I think 6 workshops of varying lengths, because some people, like the short 30 minutes, and some people want the longer hour and a half or 2-hour conversations. And even some of those, the live ones, are a little bit more fluid so that people can ask the questions that they have, which may be different now than what they were last year. And Scott had also mentioned the community of practice, which that started this fall. Also, he facilitates that, but again, just sort of that open forum for people to have the conversations and express concerns, as well as the successes, as well as the innovative ways that they're using it. And from the academy perspective, we're sort of trying to look outside of us because we can't have just-in-time training for everything. Like our faculty members on the academy also teach classes. So trying to look at what different organizations have that are out there, like free webinars. The League of Innovation does some of those, and making sure that faculty are aware that those are there too. So if they want to join, if they want to watch, if they want to learn more from other institutions, that they have those available as well. And I haven't really, from a classroom perspective, I'm not teaching this semester. I did experiment a little bit in the fall with some of my classes, but I am looking to dig in a little bit more in the summer term to how I want to incorporate that into my courses.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more. We're going to hear some student voices later, and we're going to talk a little bit more about like what you're doing in the classroom. But I think it's been wonderful how FSCJ has been embracing and creating, and you're responsible for that, for creating some workshops and bringing them in.
A lot, multiple people, because I know that like Scott and Janiyah Jones and Diane McCullough and Kimberly Falgren, like all across, our discipline areas, have been looking into like how this is going to work for them, how it's going to work for their students, how it's going to and not just their students, but also how professionally can they leverage it. And even within training and organizational development, Barb Moyer, Steve Gunther, like they're all trying to explore like how some of the tools the college has access to, like Copilot, how's that going to be useful for people who, are career employees or who are administrative employees. So I think across the college, I think we've done a lot to try and say, look, this is what it is, this is what it can do, and we want to share with you some of the ways that it can make your workflow easier or some of the things that you need to take in consideration. So, so not just the academy, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with us. Like I think we did a good job of trying to quickly get ahead. Well, we couldn't get ahead of it. We were behind it, but to keep close behind it if we could. Yeah. Yeah.
Just going to some conferences and just seeing what other universities are doing. Yeah. I think we're up there. Yeah. So kind of not necessarily professionally, but over the last 18 months, let's just say since, ChatGPT kind of came on the scene, what have you found kind of most astonishing about AI? Like, what was that moment? Like for me, I created a song about my cats. I didn't do it. AI did it. Yeah. And it was so good and so funny. And I couldn't believe it, and it was, it's not very useful in the professional environment, but either way, like whether it's at work or at home, what was that astonishing AI moment for you?
So I think for myself here, it took place in the spring of 2023, and we were in the process of doing a course redesign for REL 2300, or the World Religions class. And it had been an OER class before, but at that point we had to cull materials from across the web that were open access, share alike, if you will. And it felt kind of like a Frankensteining of a class in many ways in terms of materials. With ChatGPT available, I said, you know what, I wonder if I can just make my materials myself, including the chapters as well. Now, I had designed the REL 2300 class back in 2009, co-designed it with a colleague, in fact. We wrote all the materials at that point. It took about a year and a half to write those. Over the course of a month, I was able to write 7 chapters, 60,000 words, and with a text and everything. And that wasn't just me just prompting, that wasn't me just putting in one single prompt. That was going by section, doing prompting throughout, essentially a chapter a week. The speed in which it was done was remarkable.
So a year and a half to basically 4 weeks?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, I think mine was, in playing with it, I was trying to see if I could make a short little video in relation to what it means to be a good net citizen for like an IDS course or SLS course or whatever. And it was more intended to play with it. I didn't really think about putting it in the class, but wanted to try multiple tools. So I found a tool for generating images based off of text called Diffusion Bee, which I know is different than what Scott uses. But I wanted something that I could install on my computer and just kind of like have there. And then asked ChatGPT to make a super short script in relation to what it meant to be a netizen, and sort of like checked that against what was in the course or whatever, and had to kind of go back and shorter. Like it was very verbose, like ChatGPT wants to tell you all the things. Yeah. And then took those two things and plugged them into one of the, now I can't remember the name of it, one of the more well-known video generating tools. Like you can include an image, you can include sort of like the script, if you will, or the audio, and it will make like this sort of animated video for you. And it wasn't, the animation wasn't doing anything specific, but it just really fit. Like it was very techno kind of looking, and the script was related to technology, and like just the way it would do like the transitions and the morphs so smoothly, just kind of as a background image. I was just like, this is unreal. And I still didn't put it in the class, but I use it in a professional development to show faculty, like, these are some of the things right now that you can do with AI. And probably it can do it even better now than it did then. But I just remember thinking like there's just no way I could have done, like I would not have had the skill, the graphic design skill, the animated skill, like to be able to make something like that. Yeah. And but there it was. And it wasn't probably the best thing that a person could make. Like somebody who had the skill probably could have done a much better job, but I was sort of astonished.
It created something more engaging.
Yeah,
like a lot more engaging.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about the institution and we've talked about the classroom. How do you use it in your everyday like workflow? Like how do you use it, maybe to organize your personal life, your schedule, your meetings?
I don't really. Yeah. I hope that doesn't disappoint anybody who's watching. I don't really. I mean, I've used it a few times for like meeting minutes to summarize transcripts, so we've started recording like academy meetings. And that's useful, but if the recording's there, if somebody misses a meeting, they're more likely probably to watch the recording. I have used it from sort of a personal life standpoint. I asked it to make me like a weekly kind of food planner type of thing. Like I gave it some specific, because sometimes you're just tired of thinking about what to make every week. And I just thought, let me see what ChatGPT will tell me to make every week. And that was like from just sort of like a cutting back time in your personal life, like something you just don't want to spend a lot of time on. It generated kind of the different recipes, and then I asked it to make me grocery lists, and it made me that. And that I can see using it more if I think about using it more that way. And I know there are people who are using it a lot, just kind of sort of to manage, like you said, their workflow professionally. But I haven't really. And I think part of it is just like, this is what I'm accustomed to doing. And so now, having to think about doing it a different way, I'm just not completely able to shift yet. So
that's a thing.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah,
I get it. How about you, Scott?
So I think in terms of once it gets deeply embedded into Outlook, I think we're going to be using it quite a bit. It's not quite there yet. I get the sense they're kind of leading us along a little bit, giving us some breadcrumbs. I would say the way I use it most often right now is inevitably for almost all my emails, I will run it through ChatGPT or Claude and say, can you refine this a little bit, make sure it has a nice tone, just so it's not depersonalized. And that's one of the most effective ways. Or if I'm just stuck on a sentence in an email, say, this is kind of where I'm going with this. What are your thoughts in terms of how to finish this statement off? And that's the most practical way I use it.
Okay, so I want to transition to the clips. We're going to interact with some student and faculty voices and hear what they have to say. So for those of you who don't know, a couple of weeks ago, FSCJ hosted, the AI Advisory Council here at FSCJ hosted 2 live panels. So one was for students, and as you know, one was for faculty. And this is just a way of hearing what students are grappling with, like what they're dealing with, how they're using it, and then also how are faculty using it. And there were so many interesting voices that I tried to compile some clips here so we could hear our students and we can hear other faculties who may be in different areas. So we've recorded both sessions. We have some clips here. And I want to start with the student voices because I think sometimes we get caught up as faculty members. All of us are faculty members here. We get caught up with being on the other end of that. But students have a real conundrum right now. They have these tools, they know they're there, some of them do, some of them don't. There is a technology gap with some students who, are at such a low level that, they're not sure what's going on. But we had a live panel of students and we were able to ask them questions and they actually conducted it themselves. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with an introduction by our student facilitator. His name is Constantino. He did a wonderful job moderating. And then what's going to follow is just a comment by each of the students. So we have Bailey. She has a comment about how she uses it to help her in the classroom. Pablo, who is a computer science student, and he talks about how the teacher doesn't want him to use it. And then Mason, who is a business student, and he talks about how he uses it. So we'll listen to these 3 clips, and then I'd love to hear your response. Like maybe if there's a solution for one of the students, but we have so many ideas that are circulating around this as faculty members, but here's what some students are dealing with. So let's take a look.
Our first panelist is Pablo Garcia. He's a first-year honors student with an intended major in computer science with an aspiration in software engineering. Our second panelist, Mason Townsend, is a first-year honors student with a prospective major in business analytics and has a career aspiration in aviation and the entertainment sector. And last but not least, we have Bailey Perdue, a second-year honors student with an intended major in communications and journalism, in news broadcasting, or as a director of a nonprofit. Please give a round of applause to our panelists.
I have it help me use some of my sources to explain it to me better. So especially with very large academic sources, they can get really long and really wordy and scary to read. And I will sit there and try to read a sentence with huge words that don't make any sense with tons of evidence. And so I'll just copy and paste that into ChatGPT and ask it to explain it to me simply, and it will. So that's really helpful.
So especially my computer programming teacher, he discourages AI. Not only, because ChatGPT just writes the code for you. So there you're not learning. You're not learning. He can definitely tell, because AI uses AI, if you, let's say we're in the middle of the year, AI might use some stuff that is gonna be taught to us later in the year. So he can definitely tell whether we're using very advanced stuff that we shouldn't be using at this level. And that he says it discourages, and he's right. He discourages learning, because there we're not learning anything about the code, how it functions, how it runs. So he highly discourages AI. But in my English teacher, she, like I said before, she encourages AI for just for grammar checks. So it's really both. I get both sides of the spectrum.
I personally have never really received information. Most of my teachers in the syllabus will have a small section on AI. And within that syllabus, it kind of just describes hey, we're not going to tolerate this kind of AI use. If your AI pops up in your paper, I'm going to have to, mark you as a 0 if there's over 50% of AI in your paper. And then he would personally, this is about how it was in one of my teacher's syllabus. He kind of just outlined things that commonly would create a lot of AI in the paper, because there's a certain paper checker that checks for AI. And he was these are common things that students would tell me that would end up making their AI score significantly higher than a typical score. Otherwise, we haven't really seen a safe use guide from FSCJ. In my opinion, I haven't really seen anything out there. But most teachers just, like Bailey said earlier, say run it with caution and don't copy, and just use it to help you instead of get the answers for you.
So I think what I like here in terms of what they're expressing, I think it's right on point here, is that there are a lot of different faculty opinions in terms of how to go about using AI in the classroom right now. I think it's absolutely pertinent here. I know I said it in thinking about my syllabus for the fall already. I'm setting aside a separate day outside the syllabus day just to talking about here's how you can use AI, here's how you can't use it, with examples. Because students are going to be receiving a lot of different messages, which could lead to possible confusion. It's going to lead to confusion. Students are already expressing to me that they're confused. So you just need to be as straightforward as possible. That said, I think Haley potentially points the way in her response for how instructors can go about perhaps assessing AI. What she's alluding to is process work. Mm-hmm. How we get from point A to point B, it's that in-between space where AI is a vehicle or a tool to get us there. And that's really, if we're thinking like that, there's, I think, some possible means of assessments that we can use.
Yeah. What do you think?
So I love that she saw that at whatever level of difficulty or complexity the article had, that it wasn't accessible to her in that way, and so she asked AI to rephrase it. And I think that is a good positive use of AI. However, my question in general to students would potentially be like, at what point are you supposed to be able to understand that level of writing? Or is that vocabulary that you're supposed to be kind of acquiring? Because we know reading tends to kind of improve people's vocabulary. When they start to read complex sentence structures, it can be kind of modeled in their own writing. I would love for students to be able to better access more academic kind of research by asking AI to sort of simplify it for them so that they can really understand what's going on in some of those studies. But then at the same time, like I do think about like for her career, if she wants to be a journalist, like what kind of journalist is she going to be? Like what's going to be her area? What's going to be sort of her field? And would it be important for her to be able to learn how to read that level of writing? So I think it's positive, but it's just one of those things where the person needs to be able to have the self-awareness to determine sort of like, well, what am I supposed to know for myself versus what is it good for me to kind of like ask for simplification for? Because probably she would have said to her instructor maybe like, I have this article and it looks really great. I don't really understand what methodology means, or I'm not really understanding like what they're talking about by the limitations, and that would be a conversation. No different really, I think, than like maybe asking the AI to simplify it for her. But yeah, I think the self-awareness piece is going to be important for our students, and also why it's important for us to talk about in class too. Yeah, it's so important.
To piggyback on that comment, I think Audrey's right here, and it's also a potential opportunity as well, right? A lot of our students come to reading difficult text, not having the confidence to approach that text. Yeah. And does this provide an easy way out here? But maybe a possible opportunity where a teacher could have a formative assessment. Read this, provide what you think is the right interpretation of it, then go and use the AI and see how close in terms of your assessment was.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, using it as a learning tool. Yeah, because I remember not long ago, summary, that was a big thing. I would, push my students to summarize, and it was very difficult to do. So at what point do we say, well, ChatGPT can summarize it for you? Yeah. Any other thoughts on?
I thought it was interesting how Pablo was having the experience of like someone who told him like unilaterally no AI, and someone from another discipline telling him like this is how you use AI. And I can understand. Mason had mentioned there being like a student guide from the college, and I don't think that is ever really going to happen. Like we might have a LibGuide that offers students just a little bit of information about like general responsible use, but it's going to be specific to each class. And Pablo expressed like a real understanding for why his computer science professor told them not to use it, because to a certain extent, if that's the field he wants to go into, and it's almost just like reading and writing, like it's almost the same. Like, what are you supposed to be learning for yourself versus what do you already know that AI can kind of make a little bit easier for you? But it was really interesting that he was kind of experiencing that kind of difference of approach in the two professors that he had.
Yeah.
The last student's name again, or
So the last student's name is Mason, the business student, the one in the middle.
What stood out to me here was the professor he mentioned who the writing requirement was 50% in terms of no more.
That did stand out,
Yeah, and what it said to me is, if you're just putting a prompt in ChatGPT, you're going to get something that's 100%. To get something that's 50%, there's some prompt engineering taking place there. There's some interaction, there's some collaboration. And I not knowing who the professor is who requires that, my guess is that's kind of what's they may be thinking here, and that's a pretty progressive move.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah.
But I think this all speaks to, it's just different from one professor to the next. And and we don't have a policy yet, and we should probably not lock into a policy at this point.
I mean, I think the policy for Comp 1 and 2 would potentially be different from the policy for a business course or a paralegal course. So I think it would be really difficult to have, like, the college has statements in regards to academic honesty and, the responsibility of people to kind of maintain their integrity. And that in and of itself isn't necessarily like a cut and dry statement for students, because when we get into the nitty gritty of plagiarism, like what we see in Comp 1 is sometimes like this kind of little patchwork, which may be different depending on the discipline that they're going into. Borrowing pieces of sources and the way that the person in that discipline sort of accepts the way that they can maybe just cite at the end or whatever. Like, I don't know everybody's, approach to that. So I feel like it will be somewhat similar. Like, I think there will be more conversations among us faculty, hopefully positive ones about like, how to support students in understanding its use while still kind of ensuring that they're maintaining academic integrity. But I don't know that that we should have just sort of one blanket policy across the college.
Right.
We have the statement from Faculty Senate that was sort of like, this is what we feel about it, and it's kind of up to you depending on what you teach and how you teach. And I think that's essentially what we will have.
Especially since things change so fast.
So fast.
We have a couple clips about how the institution is responding. So yeah, let's watch this clip because they are talking about, is this going to be in IDS? So I want to see what your solutions are to that.
Yeah, education is not changing AI. AI is changing education. And I think the substance of the problem that many people have with AI is how can we channel this energy, this potential and limitless generation into a system that can foster learning. And I think that the approach that FSCJ is introducing by embracing it and attempting to quell all the issues and questions and concerns is one good way to approach it. If we give to others guides on how to use AI properly, or if we give universal institutional rules in how we can use AI without having to come with issues, or even giving the total liberty to the teachers to use it as they wish. It is a process we are in the middle of it. It's a process that is taking over, and I think that our presence, both faculty and students alike, give us an insight of how we're dealing with this problem with students using AI and how faculty can adapt to it or sometimes outright disdain it.
So I know right now, from our honors class last semester, we had to take a course that was basically how to use research materials and how to use the FSCJ library to the best of our ability to find resources for our papers, for our research, and everything like that. I feel maybe in addition to that class would be a great section on using AI properly in order to be a part of the academic classroom. Because that course right now, I know for a fact has lessons on how to use all the APA formats, how to use MLA formats, how to find evidence using the library, how to check the credibility of those evidences. And if we add a section to use AI in the academic environment, I feel that would fit very well into that class and would also educate students on how to use AI in the classroom academically and not just use it to cheat. Furthermore, I feel like each teacher should, however, give individual kind of like instructions on how they want the AI to be used in their classroom. I know each teacher is different in how they want AI to be used in their classroom and what kind of ways AI should be used in their classroom. And I think each teacher should just kind of give you a general guideline on what is acceptable AI use and what is not acceptable AI use.
I feel like every teacher should have at the beginning of the year, kind of like an addition to the syllabus, kind of like either a video they show or just them explaining how to properly use AI in their class, because not only is every professor different, every professor is different. They teach differently their subject, and also every subject is differently. So every subject will have a different use of AI, how to use it, how to not use it.
So I want to address the first three students first. Constantino, who talks about kind of He had a great question. It was like, how can we channel this energy and limitless generation, to support education? And then the other two students after that talked about, the responses from the institution and from the teachers themselves.
I think Scott mentioning how he's already planning for his next class to have like a specific time where he talks to the class about AI use and how it will or won't be incorporated into the class that his students are in. And it sounded to me like, for the most part, students just want to know. They just want to know. Like, they want you to tell them. And if you don't have any AI policy and they are, using AI in your class, and then you tell the student, your paper was flagged for AI use, it feels unfair to them because they weren't anticipating that it would be an issue. The plagiarism is a completely kind of copying and pasting AI is a form of plagiarism, but the way that we typically have talked about plagiarism is so different from using AI that students want, for the most part, not universally necessarily. There may be some students who are happy that it's vague and unclear, but they want clarity because a lot of them, at least I think, according to the students that we were listening to, they want to be in the class, they want to learn what they're there to learn, and they just want to know, like, this is out there. Can I use it to summarize something? Can I use it to, help me understand a concept in our course? Can I use it? I'm really bad at writing introductions. Can I just use it to write an introduction for my paper? They want the clarity. And I don't think, for the most part, I don't think they would mind so much if different classes have different policies, as long as we can tell them why. Why is it important that you don't use AI in this class, but that you can use AI in this class? And I think that's fair. I think it's the same as when they're taking a class for general education, and they're you have the computer science major who's taking a humanities class, and why do I need to take this class? And we frequently try to kind of explain this is why this is important to you as a person, as a learner, as a lifelong learner, as someone who's going to be contributing to our community, to our culture. But I appreciate that they were just sort of we want this from the institution, or maybe we want this from our professors, because they want clarity. They want to know.
Right, because they already understand that teachers teach differently. Professors have different expectations. And I think you're right about transparency, telling them why we're doing what we're doing. What do you think, Scott?
So I also got this sense, kind of underlying the comments here, that these students are also wanting some training themselves in terms of how to go about using AI. Now the question is that to be a classroom-on-classroom basis, or is that to be a kind of big picture basis? I don't mind doing that in the classroom, but I have some facility with AI at this point. I use it a lot in a lot of different areas. But that's the exception, probably not the rule. But at the same time, if instructors, at the very least, they will do themselves a favor to familiarize themselves with actually how AI works. Otherwise, whenever they speak about it, the students are going to know it's inauthentic. That said, there's a good case to be made for a big picture basis in terms of training, I think. We don't want to prepare our students for the 20th century education. We need to be preparing them for 21st century education. That involves prompt engineering. That's where things are going. That's where things are right now. How we go about accomplishing that, I'm not sure. But I think we need to have a big picture vision to get there.
I think that's a great point. And that's a writing skill, right? Prompt engineering.
It is.
And so, and I think...
And I'm not prepared for that.
I don't think anybody is prepared. I think that's what this conversation is for. It's for our community of educators, but also other educators who don't know what to do at this point, and starting to realize probably, especially at the end of the semester, that this is not a tech thing. That you hear AI, and if you're not involved in it, it's not me, I'm a writing teacher, or I'm a humanities teacher. But it's very much a writing thing. Yeah.
Depending on the situation, I think at this point, because of how popular AI is becoming, we should try to stop students from taking online classes as much as they do. I think this is because cheating is so much easier when you're taking an online class. And also, I find myself not learning as much. I try so hard not to take online classes unless I have to, because I have one class right now that I have to take online because I couldn't find it to fit in my schedule. And I hate the class because I feel like I just have the book open in one, side of my screen, and then the test open in this side of the screen. And the teachers know that, they're aware, but I feel like I'm getting nothing out of it. And even if I try to sit down and I'm like, okay, just read, actually just read it, I still feel like I'm not getting anything out of it the way you would in an in-person class when you have that discussion. It's so different. And so because of that, it's so hard to escape it. It's so hard to escape technology and AI and everything.
I find that it touches on the value of an authentic education and, it being engaging or not. And so it's AI is just this next layer on this problem of all online classes, which I know is still a struggle for many students. What is your take on that?
I think this kind of goes back again to students and self-awareness. Bailey was talking about a class where she didn't really have a choice, but to take it asynchronous online is what it sounded like. So I want to make the distinction maybe between live online and asynchronous online. Because I definitely think there's more of a transactional distance in asynchronous online than there are in other sort of online-based modalities. So she's talking, she's speaking to something that motivates her specifically. I don't want to diminish the fact that asynchronous online courses are extremely important to a lot of students who just truly do not have a consistent time in any given week to join a class, either remotely join a live class or physically go to a campus. That being said, it is a lot harder from an instructional perspective to create an environment that is engaging in asynchronous asynchronous online. And I am mostly speaking from myself, but I find if I can't really capture some kind of good student regular engagement in asynchronous within the first few weeks, then it just becomes something that I kind of have on a checklist to look at a couple of times a week, to grade stuff, to see if students have questions. And so then to a certain extent, I am disconnecting as well. And it is easier to cheat, not just because of the modality. I don't think the fact that it's online is necessarily what makes it harder, but there feels maybe to students as though there's less accountability because they don't really know me and they don't necessarily care what I think about their work. Or maybe there's an inauthenticity to the way I'm responding. Maybe it feels generic to them, or maybe it feels copy pasted. And sometimes when I'm giving feedback, it is a little bit kind of template based. I have these common kind of comments that I make. But I think that also speaks to why it's important for us to be transparent about when we are or are not using AI, so that we keep our humanness. And I think that is an ongoing struggle for faculty in some respects, as well as students, to keep that humanity in an online synchronous class at all. We talk about all these strategies for active learning and for giving students opportunities to talk to us, in person in real time. But just the fact of the matter is that the reason they chose those modalities is because they don't necessarily have that pocket of time that they're available when I'm available. So I don't think I would ever tell a student, you should not take any asynchronous online classes. You definitely need to be in the classroom for certain classes or anything like that. Because I don't know their life and I don't know what is feasible for them or reasonable for them. But I would probably encourage students to try to take certain classes in a live capacity if they could, so that they at least get what it feels like to be in a class with other people that you can talk to and classmates that you can interact with, where you're not just sort of replying in discussion forums, and a teacher that you can ask questions to, so that they at least have kind of the mix of that experience. But I mean, to me, cheating in an online asynchronous class can happen just as easily as cheating in a face-to-face class. It's just that I might have more relationship with the students that I see face to face, that they would maybe be less likely to want to do that because they feel just a little bit of accountability, maybe to me. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe they don't care. It's hard to know sometimes.
So I'll kind of speak about this kind of from another end. Is there a place for online with students? I think so, depending upon responsibility, of course, and personal responsibility and self-awareness. The student needs to know, can I handle this or not? From an instructional standpoint, I can say if I had to look at where I see the more egregious, blatant uses of AI at this point, it is in my more asynchronous classes. That said, I think there's a way forward to deal with this potentially, and that's not so much to try to get students to look outside of themselves, and there I'm talking in terms of, AI can provide a lot of knowledge of tertiary sources that allows for it to produce responses to prompt questions very easily. What I'm finding is that if I can ask the students to not, in having them look outside of themselves, also look within as well. So more personalized answers. Okay, so you've produced this, now step outside of yourself and reflect on the producer. Reflect on yourself. Why did you say this? Why did you construct this as you did? What was going through this? What was going through your mind as you designed this argument or as you designed this essay? Why did you choose this source versus that source? And what are your personal thoughts on the conclusions here? Almost an outer body kind of experience in that regard here. AI can't reproduce that. I'm trying to press students in that regard here to allow for a more humanized, authentic experience. I think that's the way forward, but otherwise it's hard to really control exactly what students are or are not doing.
Yeah. So it sounds like maybe reflecting on the process more, some metacognition exercises to say what's going on, and to really slow it down instead of the product. Show us your process. That's what I've been trying to do this semester, a lot of. And just kind of pushing back. Instead of giving comments about grammar and organization, I'm trying to get to the content and say, hey, I want to know what were you going through, which is not something that I've done in the past. Because, just trying to get to that more authentic experience.
This concludes part 1 of the first episode of AI Goes to College. Hop on to part 2 to hear other faculty voices as we continue this conversation. Part 2 of episode 1 can be found next in your streaming app under AI Goes to College. Thanks for listening.